What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Alright soldiers, in today's video we're going to be talking about the Abysscraft reveals for sets 12 and 13. Very excited to see what they're going to be doing for Machina, because Machina was the stronger variant in Abysscraft when Machina was running around. So for set 12, very excited to see what's going to be happening, and I have no clue what any of the cards are going to be doing for sets 13. Alright, but without further ado, let's talk about the set 12 cards. Alright, so first up we have Nuon Daybreak Vampire. So he's a 3-cost 3/3. You can evolve him for 1, but when he comes into play Fanfare, you summon an Assembly Droid or a Force Bat token. Put an Assembly Droid or a Force Bat token into your EX area. Alright, so a Mechanical Vampire, very interesting. I think that's a huge upgrade for most of the other things that we've seen in Abysscraft so far. But in terms of this ability, you're able to just go ahead and spend 3 and you're able to go ahead and start generating some value for whatever deck you're going to be choosing. Either that being for Machina or Vampire. Alright, so looking at the Nuon Daybreak Vampire, so he turns into a 4/4, but on evolve you give each 1-cost follower on your field and in your EX area +1 attack. Alright, so from what I'm seeing here, it looks like you're going to want to charge up your EX area and your field as much as you want to before you go ahead and evolve this follower, just because all those 1-cost tokens are going to get the +1 attack both on the field and in the EX area. Alright, next up we have Gremory Death Teller. So she's a 2-cost 2/2. She has Ward, but when she comes to play Fanfare, you bury the top 2 cards of your deck. You can also activate for 1 play point to summon this card from your cemetery to give it last words to banish this card. You can activate only if there are at least 10 cards in your cemetery and no cards named Gremory Death Teller on your field. Alright, so it looks like Necrochar's got a huge tool here. So not only is she a 2-cost ward, so you can play her on the back end to just go ahead and have some defense, you're able to bury the top 2 cards of your deck, and you're actually able to do it again once you activate her again. And then when she's warded again, unfortunately, she won't be able to go back into the cemetery, but she will be able to get that value back by being able to mill 4 cards. Alright, next up we have Jack Shovel Gravedigger. So she's a 2-cost 0/1. You can evolve her for 1, but she has Bane, but when she comes into play, if this card was put onto your field by an ability, you can evolve it. Alright, so I absolutely love cards like this. They kind of get past you can only evolve once per turn. So essentially you play this card from Cemetery, and then you evolve her, and then you can do her evolve abilities, and then she's probably still a follower with Bane that can rush into something. Alright, so looking at Jack Shovel Evolve, so she turned into a 1/2, and she still has Bane, but on evolve you summon an Assembly Droid token, and then you bury the top card of your deck. Alright, so of course, like I said, we have some hard removal with a Bane with Rush, which isn't too bad, and we're able to get an Assembly Droid token onto the field, which is going to help for a big mono play when playing the Machina deck, and then being able to bury the top card of our deck, so it might be able to hit that Necrocharge 10 for those other cards that we might need. Alright, and next up we have Medusa Evil-Eyed Serpent. So she's a 3-cost 3/2. When she comes into play Fanfare, you put a Medusiana token into your EX area. You can also activate to engage this card and then bury a demon token from your field or EX area. You can select the enemy follow in the field and destroy it. Alright, so it seems like every time we get a Medusa card printed, she just has hard removal. So the Medusiana token I know is going to have some sort of last words, because on this activate ability we have to get rid of a demon token, and the only demon token I'm assuming you're going to have when playing this card is the Medusiana token. So that's probably going to have some last words of some sort, but having the hard removal on Medusa as well is going to be pretty important. Alright, so looking at the Medusiana token, so it's a 3-cost 1/5, it has Rush, Assail, and Bane, but when it comes into play Fanfare, you give your leader +X defense, where X equals the number of demon followers on your field, and it also has last word, so when it dies, each opponent buries a follower. Alright, so whoa, that was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Alright, so this follower being a 1/5 with Rush, Assail, and Bane is already insane as well, but on the fact that you're going to be healing too, just because you play this card, and then you already have Medusa on the field, so you're going to be healing too. And then also on top of that, you have the hard removal for rushing into a follower, you have the removal from Medusa for getting rid of this, and then you have the last words for your opponent having to bury a follower. So you can get rid of 3 things on your turn that your opponent might have. Alright, and next up we have Friends Forever. So it's a 5-cost spell card, so you can select up to 2 Machina followers that cost a total of 5 or less in your cemetery, and then summon them. Alright, so immediately we can see that this is going to be the card that we're going to be getting Jack Shovel off of. So we can get Jack Shovel, and with a total of 5, we can also get Mono too if we're still running Mono in the Machina deck for whatever new cards we might be seeing here. But I'm assuming we're still going to be running Mono, of course. So we can get Jack Shovel and Mono, because that's only going to be a total of 4. We can go ahead and evolve Jack Shovel for free to go ahead and get an Assembly Droid out, and then do Mono's ability to get some Machina followers out, so we can evolve Mono. Alright, next up we have Liberté Werewolf Pup. So she's a 1-cost 1/1. You can evolve her for 1. Alright, and looking at Liberté Evolve, so she turns into a 2/2, but on evolve, if Sanguine is active for you, you give your leader +2 defense, and then you draw a card. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie to you, soldiers, I'm a little bit of a sucker for these low to the ground cards, because I believe Sanguine should be played really aggressively, or at least just from the Kiss of Lust deck, you know, just Sanguine just seems like it's so aggressive. So when you play Liberté Puff, you're gonna be playing her in the early game, and then of course the next card you're probably going to be playing is going to give you Sanguine active, so of course for one you ping yourself, and then you can go ahead and evolve Liberté to go ahead and heal you for 2, then drawing a card, and then being able to swing for some damage. Alrighty, next up we have Hellfire Hound, so it's a 4-cost 4/4. When it comes into play Fanfare, you banish 6 cards from your cemetery. You can select any number of enemy followers on the field and deal 6 damage divided between them. Alright, so of course there are probably better cards out there that are 4-cost removals, but if you need to start dividing damage on turn 4 for whatever demon beast deck that you might be building for Abysscraft, this will be your guy. But I think there are better 4-cost removal cards out there in the perspective decks. But hey, if I'm wrong, then you know that's not that bad. Alrighty, next up we have Garnet Waltz, so it's a 1-cost spell card. You can choose one of the following. You can either 1, deal 2 damage to each enemy leader and 1 damage to your own, or 2, summon a Assembly Droid token and then put an Assembly Droid token into your EX area. If there's a mono Garnet Rebel on your field, you can summon the second token instead. Alright, you gotta love multi-ability cards like this, so not only are you able to deal 2 damage to the enemy leader and then give yourself Sanguine if you're running like a Sanguine deck, you also have some abilities in Machina here, so if you have mono on the field, you can go ahead and summon 2 assembly droids for 1, and I think that'll be pretty helpful because you can keep summoning in assembly droids with mono's ability as well. Alrighty, next up we have Bloodstained Berserker, so he's a 6-cost 5/4, you can evolve him for 2, and he has Storm, but when he comes into play you give this follower +X, where X equals the number of cards named Bloodstained Berserker in your cemetery. Alright, so of course this card is probably only going to get a maximum of +2/+2 if you manage to mill all the other ones, or if you manage to mill all of them and then you play this off of like a card that's going to have the cemetery, it's not bad either. So I think, you know, turning this into a 7 storm damage is pretty cool, and if you have the 2 extra play points you can evolve him as well. Alright, so looking at the Berserker evolve, so he turns into a 6/5, but he still has Storm, but on evolve you select an enemy fallen field and you destroy it. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie to you, I think this card is not that bad, honestly, just because those grindy games where you're able to just swing for a good amount of damage, your opponent has that 1 ward on the field. If you evolve this follower, you can just get rid of it, and then you can storm in for the rest of the damage, and then it upgrades to at least 8 damage, so I think that's pretty cool too. Alrighty, next up we have Roly Poly Mach 1, so it's a 1-cost 1/3 and it has ward, and while there's an Anea Amethyst Rebel on your field, if this follower will take more than 1 damage, it takes 1 instead. You can activate for 1 play point to summon this card and from your cemetery to give it +1 attack, and last words to banish this follower. You can activate only if there's an Anea MFS Rebel on your field. Alright, so I think this is a pretty good defensive card when playing with Anea. So not only if our opponent takes care of Anea, we heal too, but now there's a ward that's on the field that can take 1 instance of damage and then needs another instance of damage to be like removed. Now if our opponent has the hard removal, that's going to be like the real problem here. But if we still have Anea on the field, we can go ahead and spend 1 play point to go ahead and have this ability activate again. But unfortunately, this follower won't go back because it will be banished off of its last words. Alrighty, next up we have Mechasol Deathbringer, so he's a 3-cost 1/1. We can activate for 1 play point to bury this card, and then bury the top 2 cards of your deck. It also has the last words to select an enemy follow on the field and destroy it. Alright, so before we get into the skills of this card, I do want to say that this guy really does look like that guy from Resident Evil 4. Any of you Resident Evil 4 players out there, want to give credit to Donut because he was showing me that card as well, and I'm not gonna lie to you, this card really does look like that guy from Resident Evil in like that first village that you go to. But getting more into the abilities of this card, alright, so I think when playing this card it's pretty nice, especially if you have 4 play points. You're able to go ahead and bury this card and then bury the top 2, so that's 3 extra cards into your cemetery, and this card being able to proc itself by having the last words of selecting any follower on the field to destroy it is some pretty good hard removal. Alright, next up we have Ghoul, so it's a 2-cost 2/2. When it comes into play, you bury another departed follower, and then you draw 2 cards and discard a card. Alright soldiers, so you know the motto, deck thinning is deck winning, so being able to get rid of another departed follower, and of course most of the departed followers we do know and love have some last words, so you're going to be attaining a lot of value here by being able to dig through your deck, getting rid of cards that we're not going to really need, and then we'll have to worry about those last words for the departed followers we just got rid of, which is some extra value for us. Alrighty, and lastly we have Viper Last, which is a 3-cost quick spell, so you can select enemy follow on the field and deal it 5 damage, you summon a serpent token, and you put a serpent token into your EX area. Alright, so if any soldiers are running the Gorgon deck, this is some extra support. Not only do you get to deal 5 damage in quick time, you get 2 Serpent tokens, which is pretty good value for the Gorgon deck, of course. Alright, and here is our alt for set 12, so Grimoire Death Teller. So, 2 cost. I knew they would have the cutesy little girl type of card looking like this. So I hope it's going to be super sparkly and super beautiful, and I know, Donut223, if you are watching, I know you're already going to have your playset come like the first week of set 12/13, so I hope I'm going to be able to face off against you with this card. Alright, but enough of that, let's go ahead and move into set 13, Dominion of Darkness. Alright, and looking at our first card, we have Alazar Time-Worn Vampire, so he's a 2-cost 2/2. This card can't be played from the EX area while there are dormancy counters on it. You can evolve it for 1, and at the start of your main phase, remove a dormancy counter from this card in your EX area. If there are no dormancy counters on this card, you may summon it. It also has last words to put this card into its own EX area, and place 2 dormancy counters on it. Alright, so it looks like we're going to want to play this for 2, and as long as this follower isn't banished, we can go ahead and put this card back into the EX area. There are 2 turns where we have to make sure this card is in the EX area, and let's be honest, it's not very often where our opponent's going to be interacting with our EX area. So being able to play this card for free because it naturally just summons himself at the main phase, so we're able to evolve this follower to probably get some more value. Alright, and looking at Alazard Evolve, so he turns into a 3/3, but he has the last words to put this card and Blood Art tokens into your own EX area, and then place 2 dormancy counters on this card. Alright, so it seems like we just want to go ahead and trade with this card, but we're also able to put a Blood Arts token to our EX area, which might be helping for whatever the vampire deck is here. Alright, so looking at the Blood Art token, so it's a 1-cost spell token. It deals 1 damage to your leader, and you deal 1 damage to each enemy follower on the field. You give each Alazar Time-Worn Vampire on your field +1 attack and drain, and you have 3 face-up Alazar Time-Worn Vampires in your Evolve deck. You give each Alazar Time-Worn Vampire on your field +3/+3. Alright, so if I'm pretty sure I'm reading this correctly, Alazard gets a total of 4 attack, and then he gets that extra 3 defense. So I'm wondering if Alazard is going to be able to get Storm in some sort of way. Alright, and then next up we have Laura Crimson Strife, so she's a 2-cost 3/2, and during your turn, whenever your leader loses defense, you can choose one that you haven't chosen this turn. You can either 1, select an enemy follower on the field and deal it damage equal to the number of times your leader has lost defense this turn, or 2, give this follower +1/+1, or 3, give this follower Storm. Alright, so this card will definitely be amazing in the Lust deck, I will think, just because you're able to ping yourself multiple times in 1 turn. So, whatever amount of damage that you're going to be dealing yourself, this follower will be dealing X damage for the first ability. Being able to give this follower +1/+1 while also giving it Storm if you ping yourself twice in 1 turn is going to be amazing as well, so you swing in for a lot of damage. Alright, next up we have Caress Bride of the Night, so she's a 3-cost 1/4, and you can evolve her for 1, but she has Bane, and then last word, so when she dies, you can select enemy follower on the field and deal it 3 damage. Alright, so it looks like with a common occurring with these 3-cost evolve cards, we're probably going to get some value off of swinging into another follower. Having some hard removal here with some Bane, and then when this follower dies, we can take care of another follower that might be a little bit weaker with 3 damage. Alright, so looking at Ceres Evolve, so she turned into a 2/5 and she still has Bane, but on Evolve you put a Darkest Desire token into your EX area, and then she still has the last words to select enemy follower on the field and deal it 3 damage. So I will say an amazing stat upgrade on this follower. So having the 5 defense is really what's going to matter, just in case this follower manages to stick around. And then if it does, whenever our enemy takes care of her, we can select the follower dealing it 3 damage, which is pretty good too. And then we get that Darkest Desire token, which if we have extra play points, we can go ahead and commit into that token if we have it. Alright, so looking at the Darkest Desire token, so it's a 1-cost spell token. You can bury 2 followers as an additional cost to play this card. This card cannot be played without paying the additional cost. You can deal 2 damage to each enemy leader and give your leader +2 defense. So of course, whenever choosing 2 followers of our own to go ahead and bury, we'll want to choose those followers that have last words. And just like the Ceres that we just saw, that's probably going to be one of them if we manage to hard remove and she's still in the field. We can still have access to dealing 3 damage to a follower when using her effect, and whatever last words on the other followers that we might be choosing. So I think this card might be really good in the Nephthys deck. Alrighty, next up we have Kagero Thornbound Soul. So it's a 2-cost 2/2, and for Necrocharge 10, this follower has Rush and Bane. But when it comes into play fanfare, you can choose one. One, you can select a Soul Strike in your cemetery and put it into your EX area. If you have Necrocharge 20, it costs 2 less to play this turn. And then also the second ability to bury the top 2 cards of your deck. Alright, so every time I see a 2-cost card and then Departed, it just means just applications for any deck, honestly. So having Necrocharge 10 in any Abysscraft deck is just going to be happening. So this follower having Rush and Bane is going to be amazing. So you have a 2-cost card that's just going to have hard removal. And then on top of that, when it comes into play, he has the Soul Strike, so you're probably going to be including Soul Strike into your deck. And then if you have Necrocharge 20, which isn't too crazy too in the late game, that Soul Strike card is going to be free to play. And then in the early game, you have ways to go ahead and charge up that Necrocharge by burying the top 2 cards of your deck. Alright, and then next up we have Chris Beyond the Patch. So he's a 4-cost 4/4. When it comes into play, you select the Abysscraft follower not named Chris Beyond the Patch that costs 5 or less in your cemetery. And then if you have Necrocharge 10, you can summon it and give it Ward. Alright, so we have a discount Death's Breath here, and on top of that, we also get a body as well. So in a way, it might be a little bit better, but Death's Breath is able to get a bigger cost follower. So, you know, this is why this is more of like a baller on a budget type of thing. So you can play this, and of course, you won't be playing this Fanfare without having the Necrocharge 10. So being able to get any follower out of the cemetery and giving it Ward is going to be pretty cool, while also getting a 4/4 body. Alright, and looking at Liberté Unchained Wolf, so she's a 2-cost 2/2, and you can evolve her for 2, but when she comes into play Fanfare, you bury another follower, and this card's evolve costs 1 less this turn. Alright, so it looks like Liberté is in 2 sets here, so I really want to know what's Liberté's deal. Like, she's in 2 areas at once. So I don't know if any of you soldiers might know what the lore about Liberté is, but I would like to know if you know in the comments below. Alright, so getting more into game mechanics here, so it looks like we're going to be burying another follower so we can evolve this follower for cheaper. Alright, looking at Liberté Evolve here, so if you turn it to a 3/3, but on Evolve you select the enemy follower in the field and deal it 3 damage, and if a follower was put from your field into the cemetery this turn, you can deal 4 damage instead and draw a card. Alright, so if you naturally just do this follower's Fanfare, you can deal 4 damage to a follower and then draw a card. Alright, so next up we have Silver Steel Blader. So he's a 2-cost 2/2 and he has Storm, but when he comes into play, if there's an evolved follower on your field, you can give this follower +1/+1. Alright, so I'm pretty sure this is a card that goes with Crimson Rose Queen, because you're going to be recovering all those play points for, you know, X amount of 2-cost cards in your hand. So this being one of the 2-cost cards that you do have access to go ahead and play this card. Its Fanfare is going to go off, you're going to get the +1/+1, and then you're going to be dealing damage from Crimson Rose Queen, and then you're going to be swinging damage on top of that. So if you recover a lot of play points in that one turn, I think there's a lot going on when playing a card like this. Alright, so moving on into Soul Strike. So it's a 2-cost spell card, so you can select the enemy follower on the field and deal it 4 damage. But if you have Necrocharge 20, you can deal 4 damage to its leader. Alright, so this is the card that's going to be thrown into the EX area that's going to be free if we have the Necrocharge 20. So if we have the Necrocharge 20, we're able to actually deal the 4 damage already, this card being 2 less, and then we can select the enemy follower on the field and then deal it 4 damage, and then we still have that 2-cost 2/2, which has Rush and then Bane. Alright, next up we have Linkstaff Necromancer. So she's a 3-cost 3/3, and you can evolve them for 1, but when she comes into play, you bury the top card of your deck. Alright, so I think this is a nice little 3-cost card that buries the top card of your deck, and I really do like the art for it, but of course, you know, there are better cards that probably mill 2 on like turn 2. But let's see what this evolve does, because it might have the removal that we need. Alright, so looking at the Necromancer evolve, so she turns into a 4/4, but on evolve you select a parted follower that costs 3 less in your cemetery, and then you summon it. Alright, so this card actually isn't that bad, so I think this is actually the card that you're going to be using in set to get the Steel Blader from the cemetery. So being able to go ahead and mill Steel Blader, perfect, you know, opportunities that I'm thinking of course. You go ahead and mill Steel Blader, you go ahead and evolve this follower, you get a 3/3 with Storm, you can swing in for damage, and then you can swing a 4/4 into another follower, which I think is a pretty good combo. Alright, and next up we have Noble Phantom. So he's a 1-cost 2/2, and when he comes into play, if there's a follower with Ghost in his name in your EX area, you can draw a card. Alright, so if you have Ghost tokens into your EX area, I think that's the easiest application I can think of outside of, you know, cards with the actual name Ghost, which, you know, there are only so many of them, of course. But most definitely this is probably going to proc when you have a Ghost token in your EX area, so you can spend 1 to go ahead and draw a card. Alrighty, next up we have Bandage Connoisseur. So he's a 6-cost 4/4. He has Fanfare and Last Word to select the enemy follower in the field and deal it 4 damage and 1 damage to its leader. Alright, so yeah, this card exactly screams Nephthys Abyss, just because it has Fanfare and Last Words, and when you see those cards together, or excuse me, see those 2 keywords together, you know they go exactly in that deck. So being able to select the enemy follower on the field, dealing it 4 damage, and then pinging the enemy leader for 1. Of course, you're not going to be doing anything super crazy, just because those cards are going to hit the cemetery before the turn ends, of course. So you're able to ping the enemy leader for 2, and then ping a total of 1 follower 8, or 2 followers for 4. Alrighty, next up we have Ghastly Banishment. So it's a 1-cost spell card. You can put 2 Ghost tokens into your EX area, and they cost 1 less to play this turn. Alright, so Masquerade Ghost gets some support, so we can already see the Masquerade Ghost in the spell. So not only has this deck been getting some support, I really do like that Ghosts are going to be super playable pretty soon, because you know what I'm saying. I say it every episode, if they keep printing support of it, it'll eventually be good. So I'm glad these decks are becoming more playable, and just getting 2 free ghost tokens, which are going to naturally just have Storm, and definitely in the Masquerade Ghost deck, I'm pretty sure they're going to get buffed as well. So being able to just play those 2 cards for free and then getting a whole bunch of value is going to be very amazing. Alrighty, and then lastly we have Sanguine Necklace. So it's a 1-cost amulet, so you can activate to engage this card and then bury this card. You can deal 1 damage to your leader and then draw a card. Alright, so it looks like Dire Bond just got an upgrade here. So Dire Bond was an OG 1-cost amulet that's going to ping your leader for a Sanguine, and then you draw cards. So not only can you just play this on 1, you don't have to make sure you play the Dire Bond because the Dire Bond had a fanfare. So you can just play this on turn 1. Anytime you want to activate Sanguine for yourself, you can just ping yourself for 1 and then draw a card, and you can keep having the extra play points for the later on turns because you didn't have to spend 1 for it. Alrighty, and then we have our alt for set 13, and we have Laura Crimson Strife. So any Sanguine players out there that are very excited to be running this card or be getting this card or hopefully acquiring this card, of course, you know, hope you're able to pull it or able to run it in your decks or have it as trophies because this card looks absolutely amazing. And alrighty soldiers, that is it for all of the Abysscraft reveals for sets 12 and 13. I'm very excited for these cards. I think I might be putting Sanguine back on the map just for myself. I really only had my 1 Abysscraft deck where I was running Silence, but I think I might be tinkering with Sanguine this set just because there's so much things to ping yourself. It's a lot easier and a lot better to do it than when I was doing it like, you know, 5, 6, 7 sets ago. You know, I am a bit of an unk. I'm sorry, I've been playing this game for quite some time. But definitely I'm going to be interested in playing Sanguine this set. But alrighty soldiers, make sure you are safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do.